A major security scare has rocked Washington, D.C. after two National Guardsmen were shot near the White House on Wednesday afternoon in what authorities now confirm was a targeted attack. Authorities have identified the shooter as Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, an Afghan national. But here's the disturbing part. Investigators say he had no identification on him when he was arrested, and since then, he has refused to cooperate, offering no explanation, no background, and no motive.
We're here to brief you on the tragic events that happened today at approximately 2:15 local time in Washington, D.C., where two of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners, to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA, and we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional. We will work together collaboratively because this is a matter of national security, because it's a matter of pride. President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice.
For hours, confusion swirled online after West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey mistakenly announced that the Guardsman had died. He later corrected the statement. Soon after, FBI Director Kash Patel, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, and MPD officials held a late-evening press conference.
At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high-visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm, and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring him into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital. So both the individuals, the Guard members, they are in critical condition at a local hospital at this time being treated. At this point, we have no other suspects. We have reviewed video from the area. It appears, like I said, to be a lone gunman that raised the firearm and ambushed these members of the National Guard, and he was quickly taken into custody by other National Guard members and law enforcement members. Sure. So how the suspect was apprehended, as I said, the individual, the suspect came around the corner. He immediately started firing a firearm at the two National Guard members. So at that time, there were other National Guard members that were in the area. They heard the gunfire. They actually were able to intervene and to kind of hold down the suspect after he had been shot on the ground until law enforcement got there within moments.
And he was shot by a National Guardsman?
At this point, we're still investigating exactly who shot that individual. It's not clear at this time.
Were there DC policemen in the area?
We don't know what kind of weapon. There was DC police. It happened right in front of the Metro, although there is no indication that the perpetrator was on the Metro.
In the wake of the shooting, President Donald Trump immediately ordered 500 additional National Guard troops to deploy across Washington, D.C.
I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that two National Guardsmen had been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America. Heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful. The drop in crime has been historic. The increase in safety and security has been historic. But if criminals want to conduct things like this, violence against America's best, we will never back down. President Trump will never back down. That's why the American people elected him. America and our warriors, our National Guardsmen, are strong. And so we're following this very closely. We're getting information rapidly. I mentioned the faith of this country, the Christian faith, the prayers. I would ask for prayers for our National Guardsmen.
Excuse me, Mr.
Appeals to heaven for our National Guardsmen, for their families, on bended knee as a War Department, as a nation.
Excuse me,
We will never back down. And we think about them right now.
Meanwhile, federal agencies are scrambling to piece together the suspect's background, how he arrived in the U.S., whether he acted alone, and what his motive was. Mayor Bowser called the assault on uniformed personnel an attack on America's best.
What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody. I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
My great fellow Americans, earlier today, on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C., were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. They had been deputized as part of the most successful public safety and national security mission in the history of our nation's capital, the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, which has achieved an unprecedented reduction in violent crime and crimes of all type. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. The hearts of all Americans tonight are with those 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard and their families. The love of our entire country is pouring out for them, and we are lifting them up in our prayers.